year is 2003. The most entertaining thing on the television was two fully grown men shouting "Bogies!" in public spaces, a tradition I have kept going after I'm in the pub on the piss. Talking of pubs, you could smoke in them freely whilst you wish away your wages on a filthy habit called the fruit machines. David Beckham had a dodgy haircut. We believed in a thing called love. Me and my old man went and watched Finding Nemo, a celebration that was fitting as my birthday had just passed. The seating arrangement sat me next to a strange old man who was by himself and wouldn't stop talking to me. My dad, relatively boozed up, called him a nonce. We got kicked out of the cinema. This is all the God's honest truth as well. To make up for that fact, he bought me two games, a VHS and a pirated. The VHS, the original Hook, sold by a man who had dozens of them on a blanket outside of an off-license. It was the only one that caught my attention because I was excited for the upcoming Peter Pan. Across the road, a game station. The games, I hear you ask? 1. Jak 2 Renegade, and 2. Tomb Raider, The Angel of Darkness. My parents were absolutely fine with the age rating system as they didn't believe that games could turn my mind to mush as they saw me write more notes about them in my free time than I did within my school books. Until the man behind the counter mentioned a game that would be hitting the shelf soon. A game so outrageous that it wasn't fit for my eyes. Highlighted words: banned, gruesome, vile. The response from my drunk father? Oh, I'm sure my son will have fun. Boy! We then went back to the pub. Just before my dad sunk the remainder of his pound coins into the fruit machines, he returns with a pop. I didn't care as I had my games. The movies were simply just an extra bag to carry whilst I read through the gorgeous game manuals. But more importantly, my curiosity was placed in a direction that was far higher than what happens after Nemo's mum passes away. What was so extreme about this game that it was too much for me? Two words the game station employee forgot to mention in regards to Manhunt was dog and shit. He was right. I was terrified when I was playing Manhunt, mainly because I felt like I was losing my sanity. Unnecessary repetition that didn't... I have already covered the Manhunt/Rockstar panorama in the early and mid-2000s before on the channel. To boil it down, Rockstar opened many doors for the extreme side of fantasy to exist within games. Not that gore and horror didn't exist before them, but to a large mainstream audience, Rockstar for sure pushed the boundaries to what was then accessible. And in fairness, the world was in a really sensitive place. Not a lot of things made much sense in regards to the non-fictional horror that was existing in our societies. The reason to find the foundation to why people would commit such actions that occurred seemed like a priority, so pointing the finger at anything that could potentially light the psychopathic fuse in someone's mind needed to be berated, eradicated, which ultimately made it misunderstood, and unfortunately, it was easier to blame the content within games instead of prioritizing individual accountability. And Manhunt definitely follows suit with its extreme nature that carries its own shock factor, which, for the sake of free promotional value, was fantastic, but it's a different kind of Rockstar game. Rockstar have this annoying design that refuses to fade away from their studio, with that being placing us players in environments that are extremely fast-paced, lacking all that much of a thought process. Just shoot whatever is in front of you. They add a tremendous amount of detail around their open world, so we think their missions are expansive, when realistically you're doing the same linear thing we did 20 years ago. You may innovate in the graphical realm, Rockstar, but I can see through your crap.
You cannot mesmerize me! I'm British!
Yet Manhunt is the complete opposite. In fact, as far as Rockstar games go, I would say it's probably one of the most thought-engaging that their studio has ever made. Especially at the time because it removes the expected BS and is a stealth game. Stealth games are always fun because they place so much of the problem towards our patience. You didn't want to wait, you face a consequence. You weren't paying attention to the environment's movement, you face a consequence. One of the arguments towards Manhunt's grotesque nature was what would happen if a kid got their hands on it. Someone who lacks the mental maturity in order to differentiate right from wrong. So as I was a part of that conversation at the time, I'm going to use my microphone and be the spokesperson of our generation. I would like to formally announce that I have never committed a heinous crime, nor do I have a criminal record, and I for sure as It did not have the patience in order to deal with Manhunt. There is no chance at all that you can tell me a child would have been able to play through Manhunt consistently with ease. My life was my PlayStation as a kid, to the point of where it was even featured in my annual school reports. And it wasn't until years later until I could have a comfortable grasp / have the knowledge to come to terms with Manhunt's difficulty within stealth and have the patience in order to progress, mainly because of the torture of the NPCs. NPC stealth design is fairly basic. You have idle, alert, aggressive, which will normally build up to us being dead. This simple throuple and a consequence is the concept that stealth is dependent on. You throw in some generic pathing for the NPCs to follow around the level and you have your game. But Manhunt's NPC pathing is ridiculously unpredictable once you reach any of those 3 rules. If I get stuck at a part of a game, specifically stealth games, my brain does 3 things. 1. Fail run. See how long I can survive, with the goal of being able to find the exit to get a rough outline of the map. 2. Analyze NPCs, their paths, NPC groups, hiding spots, what can be used to my advantage. And 3. Complete the level. Whilst Manhunt just did not allow that at all. Regardless of how much I thought I came to terms with its design, stealth was always its core, to the point of where once I hit one of those rules of the throuple, paths felt more like chance. NPCs completely removed themselves from their paths. They grouped up, feeling like it was impossible to separate them. The only chance in order to get a better understanding of the map was to repetitively fail and hope for the best with each change that occurs that isn't controllable. Failure from the perspective of the player is a hard balance in order to meet succession. When we build something with a fail state, we hope that by you failing, your need to complete what we placed in front of you is far superior to the failed attempt, that your need for a challenge overrides you wanting to put your controller down, that your reward center in your brain works efficiently. And in all honesty, if it wasn't for this video, I would not have completed Manhunt. I was frustrated, an emotion that rarely exists in my life. Fuck off! Annoyed, wanted to put my hand through my monitor at times because of how unreachable the next checkpoint felt. I think everyone can agree holding a player's hand is terrible, but that doesn't mean game design should feel like a matter of chance and remove skill. I constantly felt like I was flipping a coin in every arena within Manhunt, even after I failed and had the opportunity to reset. You see, when you mess up, you are either dead or manage to escape, but Manhunt is not built for the latter. I say this because when you escape, the time you spend being idle to try and level out the playing field is ridiculous. It adds unpredictability, and unpredictability is great and all, until it completely wastes your time. Manhunt has a cult following. Why? I have no idea how anybody can maintain this level of stress, but the fact that over 1,600 people signed a petition in order to reinstate the franchise rather means I am wrong, or I am overthinking things theoretically because of my frustration. So let's play devil's advocate. How do you translate genre to gameplay? Now, I'm not going to talk about Manhunt's story, as I think the concept is great but the execution is beyond a waste. As far as narratives go, it's a bit of a stinker, and until I reviewed the footage I had no idea what was going on. Moments that had the opportunity in order to be good were just like,
I'm all the family you need now.
so? There's no consequence or build-up for me to care about these characters, and even though now I do know what's going on within Manhunt's plot,
I made you!
I still do not care. But horror works for the sake of suspense and the resolution of suspense, making pacing a priority. That's fine for mediums that lack agency, where we don't have control. We are static and we are forced to consume. And one of the most annoying realizations with Manhunt is that we are not supposed to be good at it. We are supposed to fail. We are supposed to be suffering. The horror goes from tacky, predictable jump scares that exist within movies to you are personally going to feel this. And God, it works. What do you strive for when playing games? Is it experiencing a story with control? Is it the beauty of escaping? Is it the idea of winning? Or is it a matter of sharpening your skills? Now, we expect at least one of those from our investment to games. It is entertainment after all. No one buys a ticket to a movie saying, oh boy, I hope this is shit. So when a game happens to say, hey, fuck you, and we don't care whether this is fun, It's different. It's hard to accept. We walk away from said experience saying it is wrong because it didn't tick our boxes of expectation. It didn't meet the payoff that we had received time and time again. So Manhunt definitely ticks the box in terms of genre, even if it is unconventional, but that doesn't mean you can bypass the most important thing. Let me collectively present to you Manhunt's rules. Attraction to sound causes NPC movement and is easily the most important mechanic in the game. Metal Gear Solid 2 is one of the greatest games I have ever played. You have two methods for that. One, the easily accessible punching the environment. And two, the available once found items you can throw. With stealth, you can only take out NPCs if you are behind them, as your chances of survival when trying to use melee past this point are close to impossible. So staying out of plain sight is the only advantage you have in order to take out NPCs and not die. Fair enough, it is a stealth game after all. But that is only if you have managed to find a weapon. Admittedly, the map is resourceful enough to where the executions, the entire selling point of Manhunt, are easily approachable. The minimap is beyond a priority and in all honesty is more helpful than the third person perspective, so it's fairly straightforward. At least it would be if the NPC attraction wasn't so annoying. Multiple NPC paths are easily disrupted when using sound, and sound is a necessity in order to attempt to draw one NPC in at a time, as trying to remain idle behind them in a rush will automatically trigger Manhunt's go yourself feature. Hiding NPC bodies is also a great advantage to have in order to remain undetected, but when you are, run. If you are slow, you are dead. The issue is, when you manage to get away, the stability of the map turns upside down and you are better off dead anyway. The random gun segments that exist so we don't feel like we're doing the exact same thing allow us to use cover, which is its only purpose. Metal Gear Solid 2 is one of the greatest games I have ever played. For its time, it was like, what the f***, this is great. 10 years ago, it was like, what the f***, this is great. And even now, it is like, what the f***, this is great. In fact, the only downside to MGS2 is the length of the character dialogue. It's an actual piss take. But in comparison to Manhunt's rules and mechanics, the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. Admittedly, MGS is far more complex. Rockstar clearly said, oh, that Konami game everyone and their mothers are playing and talking about? Give us a few years, we'll stir up the pot. And you want to know the irony? Metal Gear Solid 2 has the ability to be infinitely more annoying than Manhunt because of its possibilities. But it isn't, because MGS2 is sensible with its design and its approach for making you fail. Metal Gear Solid, it's just beautiful. For instance, when you die in Metal Gear Solid 2, the checkpoint marker is whatever room you entered before you died, essentially throwing you right back into the arena and scenario you failed at. If you fail and fail again, you are learning on the spot, whilst Manhunt sends you back a distance that at times feels like miles. With MGS2, there are so many options and lessons within the level design, mechanics, and weapons you find at your own will that can aid you in completing your mission, but doesn't make your movement and playthrough feel void, so your investment with your time isn't wasted even if you fail. Also, unlike Manhunt, MGS has a really smart approach to its attraction system. It essentially stems from a singular NPC filter that incorporates time to build towards a consequence, with that being other NPCs becoming more cautious when their comrades are not responding, eventually making them investigate the area the NPC you took out was posted. So right from the jump, that singular NPC filter builds up to a consequence that doesn't allow you just to be comfortable rinsing and repeating the same mechanics. And you know what the funniest thing is? Because of that, MGS2's tension is far superior to Manhunt's by miles, because you are consciously thinking the entire time. So why have I presented you with the genius of MGS2? Because not only is it a far better stealth game, it is also an incredible highlight of how Manhunt failed with its biggest issues. The NPC pathing, the build-up and executions being spotted, and its NPC swarm consequence. So how do we keep the brilliant genre that is horror alive inside of Manhunt, yet find a suitable balance in order to make the experience somewhat fulfilling and not feel like a continuous waste of time? It's simple. Prioritize smaller parts of objective importance. Make the NPCs puzzles instead of random I'm going to rain shit on you because I can. Let's enter a generic map. I'm not in the business of trying to get sued, so here is a low poly example of what I'm talking about. Roughly here is our entrance, and here is the instigation to the arena. Call it our first lesson. The rules. Take MGS's singular filter in terms of sound attraction. Remove Manhunt's ability to draw in multiple NPCs at the same time, but make sure the NPCs return to their path if you do not execute. And make sure that the failure is entirely on the side of you being dead if you are caught. Keeps the restart of the arena for the horror. Puts the blame on you and pushes the importance of actually trying to get better at the game and use the mechanics. Let me present you each NPC's purpose. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Now I think a game like Manhunt would benefit massively by using a pivot system that is used as some form of puzzle with its NPCs. 1 is essentially a decoy. 2 is a direct consequence for the timing for number 1. 3 is another decoy in order to get to 5. 5 is a consequence for our stupidity and impatience, as he is our dead on sight. The reason to why 5 is so important is because what he's protecting. Number 4's path. 4 will obtain a key to the exit of the arena. Manhunt has the occasional scenario where using the level design to progress is mandatory. Even though they are poorly lit and hard to see, it doesn't matter, it's not a good game. Take out 4, take out 2, progress. Sounds like a lot to cram in, but essentially, I need to use you to get to you. If you are blind to this level, you will have no choice. You will have to learn this pattern, and that's the difference between Metal Gear Solid and Manhunt Stealth. With Manhunt, the pieces of information you gather can be rendered as pointless. Failing but having that knowledge does not put you in a favourable position, whilst MGS does. In a scenario of linear progression, using a pivot system is such an easy way to juggle the mess of theme, genre, and skill. You have no choice but to figure out the puzzle. So in terms of strategy, the correct path to complete the mission safely would be 1, 3, 5, 4, 2. Information that we obviously won't know once we enter the arena. Now this works for me because they cancel each other out. You have instant failure. You need to be strategic. You will need to learn. And pacing and timing are key. Instead of Manhunt's constant, fuck you, fuck you. So if I could go back in time to warn Mini T about the hype, I'll tell him to worry about something else. A friendly reminder to anybody that didn't want us playing Manhunt back then. The hysteria you created in order to put yourself in a favourable position to the masses for validation in your occupation made me want it. The more you talk about something, the more you attempt to ban it. The more labels you apply to try and disrupt it, we will view it. We will want it. Because we are curious of the hype. If there wasn't a huge fuss about Manhunt's contents, I wouldn't have given a damn. If you don't want something to reach a mass audience, do not promote it.